Hi, welcome back. So, today we are going to start with a new chapter, which is the fifth one, which says sensory, attentional, and perceptual processes. So, let's just firstly understand the point what is a stimuli or what could be an stimuli, because every now and then we use this word. So, stimuli or stimulus is a thing or a event which will probably evoke any certain reaction, maybe to any organ, to any tissue, basically as a human individual. So whenever it could be a thing, it could be an event, whatever the reaction that particular stimuli is able to evoke in an organ or in tissue is something which we really need to understand first. Now let's understand the thing about sensory process. We know all the five sensations, we know how we perceive things from those using those sensory organs. So basically it is the way that our brain is receiving, organizing, and then responding to the sensory input in order to when we are able to behave in a consistent or a meaningful manner. सो बेसिकली आप एक किसी स्टिमुलाई को कंसिडर करते हो, आप किसी के स्टिमुलाई को देख रहे हो, कोई थिंग, एक इवेंट जो भी आपका एक रिएक्शन इवोक कर सकता है, वहां से आपके जो सिग्नल्स रिसीव होते हैं वो जाते हैं आपके ब्रेन के पास, एंड देन ब्रेन इवेंचुअली उसे रिसीव करने के बाद ऑर्गेनाइज करता है और फिर एक रिएक्शन, एक रिस्पॉन्स डेवलप होता है. ये जो प्रोसेस है, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज द सेंसरी प्रोसेस. नेक्स्ट कम्स द अटेंशनल. So attentional is basically the allocation of all the limited cognitive processing. Basically आप अगर एक environment में हो तो वहाँ पर आपके पास सिर्फ एक stimuli नहीं होगी, there are multiple number of stimuli, but when you are able to focus on any one particular stimuli or maybe two, when you are able to centralize your focus, your command towards your concentration towards one particular or any specific stimuli and limit the allocation, at that point it is called as the attentional process. Third is the perceptual. So perceptual is basically a sequence of steps which begin whenever you are with the environment and it leads to a perception of a stimulus. Basically आप एक किसी स्टिमुलस को परसीव कैसे कर रहे हो, आप उसे कैसे देख रहे हो, आप उसे कैसे, कौन से सिग्नल्स के थ्रू आप उसे अपने ब्रेन तक पहुंचाना चाहते हो, कौन से सिग्नल्स आप रिसीव कर रहे हो उस एक पर्टिकुलर स्टिमुलाई से, दैट इज कैन बी अ परसेप्शन. आपने ये गेम बहुत बार देखा होगा जहाँ पे देर इज अ 6 और मे बी 9 और उसके आमने सामने दो लोग खड़े होते हैं, तो फॉर वन पर्सन इट इज 9, फॉर वन पर्सन इट इज 6. दिस इज कॉल्ड परसेप्शन. ये जो प्रोसेस है, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज परसेप्चुअल प्रोसेस. Okay, so now let's start talking about psychophysics, or from where we have got these terms, which is absolute threshold or difference threshold. So basically this concept was described by a psychologist named Ernest Weber, and later it was expanded by one of the psychologists named as Gustav Fechner. So let's take an example and try to understand this thing. Imagine that you have presented a sound to a participant and then slowly you're increasing the decibel level, maybe the volume or maybe the sound level, you're increasing it. In this case, you had to increase the sound level by 7 decibels before the participant could tell that this volume had increased. So in this case, the just noticeable difference would be 7. मतलब कि आप अब इसको इस तरीके से समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. पार्टिसिपेंट है जिसको आप एक कोई भी म्यूजिक सुना रहे हो, एंड एक पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट के बाद व्हेन यू आर इंक्रीजिंग द साउंड और इंक्रीजिंग द डेसिबल लेवल, तो जो एक पॉइंट होगा ना छोटा सा जहाँ पे उस पर्सन ने उस डिफरेंस को नोटिस किया, वो जो पॉइंट होगा दैट विल बी कॉल्ड एज द नोटिसेबल डिफरेंस और द डिफरेंशियल थ्रेशोल्ड. मेजरली द थ्रेशोल्ड. थ्रेशोल्ड जैसे होता है ना, आप अभी एक ग्लास ले लो और आप उसमें पानी पोर करो, पोर करते टाइम जब वो ब्रिम तक आ जाएगा एंड उस एक मोमेंट पे जहां पर पानी गिरना नीचे स्टार्ट हो जाता है, दैट इज अ पर्टिकुलर थ्रेशोल्ड. ठीक है, तो अभी हम देखते हैं एब्सोल्यूट थ्रेशोल्ड क्या है और डिफरेंशियल थ्रेशोल्ड क्या है. सो एब्सोल्यूट थ्रेशोल्ड इज द मिनिमम इंटेंसिटी ऑफ ए स्टिमुलाई दैट अ पर्सन कैन नोटिस विद देयर सेंसेस. सो And let's take an example. If an individual has to listen for the tones which are of different intensity, this threshold is likely to change as a person becomes older, since there is a age related hearing problem. Absolute intensity can also be used when assessing the fitness of individual and for comparing the fitness of different groups of people. If a person is having the vision measured, for example, a candle will be held at differential threshold and the absolute threshold will be determined. So basically एब्सोल्यूट थ्रेशोल्ड एक ऐसा मिनिमम इंटेंसिटी पॉइंट है जहां पर हम वो नोटिस डिफरेंस करना स्टार्ट कर देते हैं. ठीक है, अभी देखते हैं व्हाट इज डिफरेंशियल थ्रेशोल्ड. अब डिफरेंशियल थ्रेशोल्ड इज बेस्ड ऑन हाउ डिफरेंट द इंटेंसिटी of separate stimuli has to be in order for a person to notice that they are different. मतलब कि आप इस तरीके से समझो कि हैविंग द एबिलिटी टू डिस्क्रिमिनेट बिटवीन टू ऑडिटरी टोन्स दैट आर बीइंग हर्ड, मतलब कि जो दोनों अलग अलग वेरिएंट हैं, जब उनको एक पर्सन सुन रहा है, जिस तरीके से वो रिसीव कर रहा है सिग्नल, परसीव कर रहा है सिग्नल और उस ऑडिटरी टोन को सुन रहा है, तो वो कौन सा एक मोमेंट होगा जहां पर ही इज एबल टू डिस्क्रिमिनेट कि हाँ ये दोनों ऑडिटरी टोन्स एक दूसरे से अलग हैं. दोनों को एक एग्जाम्पल और मेजर कैसे कर सकते हैं या फिर हम उसका मीन वैल्यू कैसे निकालेंगे, इसके बेसिस पे समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो एब्सोल्यूट थ्रेशोल्ड क्या है? एक मिनिमम इंटेंसिटी है जहां पर एक स्टिमुलस की वजह से a person can notice with the changes with their senses. The lowest value obtained is the 50% of the time. This particular absolute threshold is not based on a change in the stimuli and also the minimum intensity. For example, having a hearing test done where you have to listen to tones of varying intensity. मतलब कि टोन सेम है बट हम इंटेंसिटी को वैरी कर रहे हैं. On the other hand, differential threshold में the minimum level of a person where he can detect between two other stimuli. यहाँ पर yes, it is based on the change in the stimuli and the minimum difference is in the intensity. मतलब कि हैविंग टू डिस्क्रिमिनेट बिटवीन टू ऑडिटरी टोन्स, वही वाला एग्जांपल हो गया. एब्सोल्यूट थ्रेशोल्ड में आपका टोन सेम है, इंटेंसिटी वैरी कर रही है. डिफरेंशियल थ्रेशोल्ड में आपके ऑडिटरी टोन्स ही डिफरेंट है. Now let's move ahead with the next topic, which is the human eye and the structure and functions of it. So basically the visual sensations. So you might have already seen this diagram before and you might have already know the basic terms, how they are defined and everything. Let's just get a recap of it. So our eye is made up of three layers. In the outer layer there is a transparent cornea and a tough sclera that surrounds the rest of the eye. It protects the eye and maintains its shape. Now let's move ahead with the middle layer, which is the choroid, which is richly supplied with blood vessels, and the lastly inner layer is known as the retina. It contains all the photoreceptors, which is the rods and cones, and an elaborate network of the interconnecting neurons. So basically the eye is generally compared with a camera. For example, the eye and a camera have a lens. The lens divides the eye into two unequal chambers, namely aqueous humor and vitreous humor. The aqueous humor is smaller in size and filled with a water-like substance called aqueous humor, and the vitreous chamber is located between the lens and the retina. It is also filled with a jelly-like protein which is called as the vitreous humor. These fluids is going to help holding the lens and it's in its appropriate place and shape. Eventually, it will also allow enough flexibility for the occurrence of accommodation. Now, what is accommodation? There is a different types of accommodation, which is light and dark. We will move ahead with working of the eye, and then there we will deal with this. Let's talk about ciliary muscles. So the process where the lenses change its shape in order to focus the objects at varying distances. This process is regulated by the ciliary muscles, which are attached to the lens. The iris serves the purpose. It is a disc-like colored membrane lying between the cornea and the lens, and it is also going to control the amount of light entering into the eye by regulating the pupil dilation. Retina is the innermost layer of the eye. We have also talked about rods and cones. So, rods are the receptors for the scotopic vision, which is the night vision. They operate at a low intensity of light and can also lead to achromatic, which is colorless vision. On the other hand, cones are the receptors for photophic, that is daylight vision. They operate at high level of illumination and lead to a color vision. Each eye contains about 100 million rods and 7 million cones. There is also a point of yellow spot, which is the cones are highly concentrated in the central region of the region surrounding the fovea, which is the small circular region of the size of a pea, which is also called as the yellow spot. Besides all these things, retina also contains a bundle of axons of cells called ganglion cells that forms the optic nerve and which will lead to the brain. Now, we also talked about the adaptation. So, light adaptation refers to the process of adjusting to bright light after the exposure to a dim light, and this process takes nearly a minute or two. On the other hand, dark adaptation refers to the process of adjusting to a dimly illuminated environment after exposure to a bright light. आप ये लाइट और डार्क अडेप्टेशन एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हो अगर आप बहुत धूप से बाहर आओ, धूप से आप किसी अंदर अंधेरे कमरे में आओ जहाँ पर लाइट नहीं है, इल्यूमिनेशन कम है, तो उस टाइम पे डार्क अडेप्टेशन होगा. जब आप एक लो इल्यूमिनेटेड रूम से बाहर जाते हो सन में और आपको थोड़ी देर के लिए ब्लैंक हो जाता है, आपको बहुत अच्छे से क्लियरली दिख नहीं रहा होता है, तो ये वाला जो होता है दैट इज लाइट अडेप्टेशन. Now, we would also talk about the after images. So, this effect is called as the image. The effect of a visual stimulus persists for some time, even after the removal of that particular stimulus. हमने ये चीज़ experience की होगी. So, this is called as the positive after image, which resembles the original stimulus in terms of hue, saturation, and brightness. They usually occur after a brief intense stimulation of dark adapted eyes. On the other hand, negative after images appear in the complementary colors. Similarly, red stimulus will yield a negative after image of a green color. Now let's move ahead with auditory sensations, which is the ear. So ear is the primary receptor of auditory stimulus, and the structure of a ear is divided into three segments called the external, middle, and the inner. External ear contains two structures, namely pinna and auditory meatus. Pinna is a cartilaginous funnel shaped structure that collects sound waves from the surrounding, and auditory meatus is a canal protected by hair and wax that carries sound waves from pinna to the eardrum. Middle ear starts with a thin membrane which is highly sensitive to sound vibrations, and they increase the intensity of sound vibrations about 10 times and send them to the inner ear. Inner ear has a complicated structure known as the which is basically a bony shell called baby labyrinthine. A lymph-like fluid is found in the space between the membrane, which is called as the perilymph. It is filled with a spirally coiled membrane called basilar membrane and got a fine hair cell arranged in a series to form the organ of the cortel, and this is the main organ of hearing. If we talk about the working of an ear, then let's come to the point as sound as a stimulus, where any physical movement disturbs the surrounding membrane, that is air, and pushes the air molecules back and forth. This results in changes in pressure that is spread outward in the form of sound waves traveling at the rate of 110 feet per second. The simplest kind of sound wave is one of that causes successive pressure in the form of single repeating sine wave. Sound waves vary in amplitude. Now, amplitude, it is a general measure of stimulus magnitude. It is the amount of the change in pressure, that is the extent of displacement of the molecules from the position of the rest. Next is the loudness. Loudness of the sound is determined by the amplitude. Pitch refers to the highness or lowness of a sound. Timbre refers to the nature or quality of the sound. For example, the sound of a car engine and a person talking differ with respect to the quality of timbre. So, if you actually look into it, the human eye and human ear, both of these working and mechanisms of these is not very much complex. It is just that you will have to focus on the terms, basically all the organs and how actually they are connected, and eventually we are able to receive the signal and which goes into the brain. This part is more like a biology thing because it is dealing with all those terms, and it is basically dealing with the biology part. So in this presentation, might be you will not be seeing all these explanations which I'm giving right now, but don't worry, just keep listening to it and try to form a image that how basically this process is happening, because all these processes happens in like in a snap of seconds, where an individual is not able to focus that what is happening when. So I just want you guys to listen it too carefully to get to know that how all these things are happening. Try to imagine, try to form a connecting line between all the terms, between all the functions that I'm mentioning here. And don't worry about that, in this presentation there the functions are not mentioned. You can actually get to know all the functions from the notes, but firstly it is important you to connect all the lines and connect all the nerves, so that you can actually send a very meaningful message to your brain that yeah, this is something which you're able to learn. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the attentional process. So first thing which we are going to deal in this is that how basically attention is classified in a number of ways, and the process oriented view is going to divide it into two types, which is selective and sustained. So selective attention is concerned mainly with the selection of limited number of stimuli or the objects from a large number of stimuli. Now let's move ahead with the factors which could affect this process. External factors. External factors are related to the features of the stimuli, other than things like held constant, size, intensity, motion of the stimuli appear to be important determinants. So large, bright, moving stimuli easily catches our attention. Fine. Next is the internal factors. Internal factors lie within the individual. This may be divided into two categories, which is the motivational and cognitive. So, motivational is related to our biological or social needs. When we are hungry, we notice a event, even a faint smell of food. है ना? But on the other hand, when we are not hungry, then we don't just focus on such things. Next is the cognitive factors, which is going to include such things like interest, attitude, or whatever the preparation set you are using. So similarly, we pay quick attention to certain objects or events to set generate a mental act or a state in a certain way. Now, next is something where we will talk about the theories of selective attention. So, first comes the filter theory. Filter theory was developed by Broadbent, and according to this, he gave a term about a bottleneck situation. So, basically, imagine a funnel where you are ignoring all the other stimuli, and through the funnel, through that bottleneck, only few stimuli are able to pass on which you are focusing. Next is the filter attenuation. It was developed by Treisman, and he proposes that the stimuli not getting an access to the selective filter at a given amount of time are not completely blocked, but the filter only attenuates or weakens their strength. For examples, one's name in a collective dinner can be noticed even at a very low level of sound. Such stimulus, even though fairly weak, may also generate a response. So basically, Treisman eventually like evolved with the theory given by Broadbent that even though if in a bottleneck situation, all the other stimuli which are not getting filtered, which are not getting the uh, access to come inside the filter or in the focus, is still their strength is weakened. ऐसा नहीं है कि they'll just fade away. Next, let's talk about the multimode theory. So, multimode theory was given by Johnston and Hines, and they believe that attention is a flexible system that allows the selection of the stimulus over others at three stages. So, at stage one, the sensory representation, that is the visual images of stimuli, are constructed. At stage two, the semantic, that is the name of the objects, are constructed, and at stage 3 The sensory and semantic representation enters the consciousness. Now there are few factors. Now let's talk about the sustained attention. Sorry. Yeah. So sustained attention, while selective attention is mainly concerned with the selection of stimuli, sustained attention is concerned with the concentration. So it is going to refer to our ability to maintain the attention to an object or an event for a longer duration of time. There are few factors which will actually influence this. First is the sensory modality, which is performance is found to be superior when the stimuli or the signals are auditory than when they are visual. Next is the clarity of stimuli. That is another factor. Intense and long lasting stimuli facilitate sustained attention and a better performance. Temporal uncertainty is the third factor, which appear at a regular interval of time and they are attended better than when they appear at an irregular interval. Spatial uncertainty is the fourth factor, which is the readily attended, that is because of a fixed place. Attention has even several practical implications, and the number of objects one can readily attend to a single glance is used to design the number of plates, or basically that how a person is going to attend. So it doesn't mean that if you are filtering any one particular specific event or an stimuli, the other will fade away, the other just get weakened. Now let's talk about the perceptual processes, how we are perceiving. So there is an stimulus, then we have sensory receptors, and because of our attention it goes into the brain, that is CNS, which will also include learning, memory and other psychological process, and eventually this will called as the perception or how we are perceiving. So the idea of recognizing or the process of this begins from the parts, which serves as the recognition of the whole. So basically we have two notions. One is the bottom up processing and second is the top down processing. So let's talk about both of these. If we look into the top down processing, then it is the interpretation of incoming information based on our the prior knowledge or experience or expectation that we are already having. So it is one's previous knowledge, experience and expectation. On the other hand, top bottom up processing, sorry, it begins with the retrieval of sensory information from our external environment to build a perception, and no learning is required and perceptions are solely based on new stimuli from one's current external environment. Okay, so now let's talk about the perceiver, because human beings are not just mechanical and passive recipients of the stimuli. There are actually events or factors which are going to affect this process, and actually going to help to understand the external world also, not just affect. So first is the motivation. The need and desire of a perceiver is strongly influences his or her perception. Experiences were conducted to examine the influence of hunger on perception. So when a hungry persons were shown ambiguous pictures, they were found to perceive them as pictures of food objects. So किसी भी स्टिमुलाई को परसीव करने के लिए एक ह्यूमन इंडिविजुअल का मोटिव क्या है, वेदर ही और शी वांट्स और डिजायर्स फॉर समथिंग, तो उसका परसेप्शन वैसे ही चेंज होता है. नेक्स्ट इज द एक्सपेक्टेशंस और परसेप्चुअल सेट्स. सो एक्सपेक्टेशंस अबाउट we might perceive in a given situation also influences the perception. The phenomena of perceptual familiarization or generalization reflects a strong tendency to see what we expect to see when the results do not accurately reflect the reality. For example, if your milkman delivers your milk daily at 5:30, any knocking at the door around at that time is likely to be perceived as the sense of the milkman, even if it is someone else. Similarly, let's take another example. If you're waiting for someone, then even if the person is not there at the door and someone is knocking, it is very likely that you will perceive that the person is at the door about whom you were waiting for. So this is what expectation or perceptual sets are, or maybe the perceptual generalization or familiarization. Next is the cognitive style. So cognitive style refers to a consistent way of dealing with our environment. it significantly affects the way we perceive the environment. So there are several cognitive styles that people use in perceiving the environment. For example, one of the most extensive is the field dependent and field independent. So field dependent is people perceive the external world in its totality, that is in a globe or a holistic manner. On the other hand, field independent is that where the external world, by breaking into the smaller units, by analysis or by differential manners, like if you try to perceive the triangles, those who can do it quickly, it would be called as field independent, or would take a long time, it would be field dependent. Next is the cultural background and experiences. So different experiences and learning opportunities available to a people in different cultural settings is going to influence their perception. People coming from a pictureless environment fail to recognize objects and pictures. So this is how basically a culture or a experience would influence. Okay, so now let's start with the topic, which is the form perception. How we are actually forming the perception, how we are organizing the visual aids that receive, and then give it a meaningful whole. Now, several psychologists have tried to read about this, but there is one researcher which is very prominent in the Gestalt psychology, is Kohler, Kofka, and Wertheimer. So, according to them, we perceive different stimuli not as discrete elements but as an organized whole that carries a definite form. For example, if you see someone coming from the door, then you don't perceive their hand as any other particular stimuli, or any maybe arms separately, legs separately, nothing like that. You just say the name of the person who is entering, or maybe if even if the person you don't know the name, he or she is a stranger, then you basically treat them as a whole, not as a separate organ. So the gestologist also indicated that our cerebral processes always oriented towards forming a good figure, that is the pregnaz, the reason why we perceive everything in an organized form. That is the reason, because we are trying to form it in a very organized manner. Then he also talked about the figure ground segregation. So figure ground segregation is basically includes all those characteristics, that is figure has a definite form while background is something which is formless. Figure is organized and background is not that much organized. Like if we compare them, figure appears more clear, limited, near, while background appears unclear, unlimited, and away from us. So if we look into it, then there are few principles which you will have to read. First is the principle of proximity, where we say that objects which are close together in a space of time, they are perceived as something which are belonging to a group. Then the principle of smallness, according to this, a smaller area tends to be seen as a figure against a larger background. Then similarity, objects that are similar to one another have similar characteristics, and that is why they are perceived as a group. Then the principle of symmetry says that symmetrical areas tend to be seen as a figure against asymmetrical backgrounds. The principle of continuity says that we tend to perceive objects as belonging together if they form a continuous pattern. Then the principle of surroundness says the areas surrounded by others tend to be perceived as a figure. And the principle of closure says we tend to fill the gaps in a stimulation and perceive the objects as a whole. You should refer page number 100 and 101 for these principles in NCERT book, where you can actually see some diagrams, some figures are there which will help you to understand these principles in a very better way. Now let's talk about perception of space, depth, and distance. So first is the monocular cue. Basically, monocular cue of a depth perception is very effective when the objects are viewed with only one eye. These cues are often used by artists to induce in depth in 2D paintings. So there are few things which are related to this. Depth perception is something which is very important in our daily life. For example, when we are driving, we use perception to assess the distance between any approaching car or bike or something, and we decide to call a person walking down the street. We determine the loudness with which to call. So all these things comes under depth perception. Then there are few points as well, like relative size or overlapping, linear perception, aerial perception, light and shade, texture gradient, motion parallax. All these things are is a part of a monocular cue. Next is the sorry for that. Binocular cue is physiological cues, basically all those retinal or binocular disparity, convergence, and accommodation. Okay, so now let's talk about the perception contingencies. So, perception of the object as relative size in spite of the changes in the stimulation of sensory receptor is what we call as perceptual constancy. So, size constancy, that is the size of an image of our retina, changes with the change in the distance of the object from the eye. For example, when you approach your friend from a distance, your perception of the friend size does not change much despite the fact that the retinal image. जैसे अब आपका फ्रेंड अगर बहुत दूर है और आपको रेटिनल इमेज पे उसकी हाइट काफ़ी छोटी सी बन रही है, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उसकी हाइट छोटी है एक्चुअली में. स्टिमुलाई की हाइट वेरी नहीं करेगी, वेरी करेगा आपका रेटिनल इमेज. नेक्स्ट इज द शेप कॉन्स्टेंसी. Shapes of a familiar object remain unchanged despite changes in the pattern of the retinal image. For example, a dinner plate looks the small shape whether the image that it casts on the retina is a circle or an ellipse or a roughly or a short line. Next is the brightness constancy. Visual objects not only appear constant in shape and size, but they also appear constant in the degree of the whiteness or blackness or darkness or whatever you want to say it. The tendency to maintain the apparent brightness constant under different amount of illumination is called the brightness constancy. For example, surface of a paper which appears white in the sunlight is sometimes perceived as a white in the room light. Similarly, coal that looks black in the sun also looks black in a room light. So this is what brightness constancy is. Next, let's move ahead with the illusions. So we can say that our perception could be sometime resulting in mismatches or misperceptions or misinterpretations of informed received by sensory organs, which we generally call as illusions. This is why illusions are also called primitive organizations. They can be experienced by stimulation of any of our senses and have studied them more commonly in visual than in other sense modalities. So first is the geometrical illusion. Miller-Lyle illusion have been shown that all of us perceive a line shorter than the next line, although both the lines are equal, just because of the shape. One is having the inward arrows, other is having the outward arrows. So that is why there is a difference. Although both the lines are same, we perceive them as longer than shorter. If we also talk about apparent movement illusion, so this illusion is experienced when some motionless picture are projected one after another at an appropriate rate. So this illusion is referred to as phi phenomena. When we see moving pictures in a cinema show, we are influenced by this kind of illusion. The succession of the flickering electrical lights also generates this illusion. Now, lastly, I would end this chapter by telling you some of the concepts related to socio-cultural influences of perception. Several psychologists have studied the process of perception in different socio-cultural settings. You already familiar with the Miller-Lyle or vertical horizontal illusion figures. Psychologists have used these figures with several groups of people living in Europe, Africa, and many other places. So they did an extensive study and compared the sample from remote African villages and western urban settings. It was found that African subjects showed greater susceptibility to the horizontal vertical illusion, whereas the westerns showed greater susceptibility to the Miller-Lyle. Living in a dense forest, the African subjects regularly experience the vertical long trees, and develop a tendency to overestimate it. On the other hand, the Westerners who lived in an environment characterized by right angles developed a tendency to underestimate the length of the line characterized by the enclosure, that is, the arrow ahead. So, these studies indicate that the interpretation of pictures is strongly related to the cultural experience of people. Why people in general can recognize familiar objects in picture, those less exposed to picture have difficulty in interpretation of actions or events depicted in them. Sociocultural factors play an important role in the perception by generating differential familiarity with and salience of a stimulus, as well as certain habits of perceptual influences among people. So with this, we have came to an end to this chapter, and I hope you guys were able to understand it. If there is any such doubt, you may leave ahead freely in the comment box, or you may write to me on my email ID or on my Telegram channel. You know the drill. All the learning materials, you can find them through the description box. Check out the links of the Google Drive and also the Telegram channel, where you can find all the learning materials. In this presentation, I tried to keep it very short and precise and crisp. I omitted few of the functions writing in the presentation, but yes, I tried my best and used all those terms and basically elaborated all the functions through my explanations. Don't worry, all these things you will find in the notes, which will be very helpful for you writing your answers and understanding the concepts in a very better way. In this chapter, we talked about the sensory processes, attentional processes, and the perceptual processes, how we are perceiving the external world. So, yeah, that's all from my side, and I hope this was very helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that the next lecture, whenever I'm uploading it, you will be notified. Thank you.